Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 3, IP addresses. Now, if you recall back to the first lesson in this unit, we talked about the 5 ingredients of the internet. Wires and wireless, IP, we covered that last lesson, IP, which we'll cover in the next 2 lessons, TCP and UDP, and then TLS, HTTP, and DNS, which we'll cover in future lessons. But right now, we're covering IP addresses. So this is the first part of covering Internet Protocol, IP. Let's start with talking about IP addresses. So the central question we want to answer is, how does the Internet tell which computers should get which message? Which is like the central question of these next 2 lessons when we're talking about IP. Now, your objectives for this lesson are, I can identify 2 major types of IP addresses: IPv version 4, IP version 6, IPv6. I can identify the need for IP addresses, and I can explain the role of IP in the internet. Cool. So let's talk about, for a minute, what is an IP address. So here are some examples of IP addresses and things. Okay, so what exactly is an IP address? Well, an IP address is a computer's unique address, right? Just like homes need mailing addresses, just like homes need mailing addresses, connected devices need IP addresses, and so they are numbers that identify which device is which on the internet, and they're unique. So when a computer sends messages, they use their IP address and their IP address as the sender, and the IP address of the receiver as well. So when a computer sends messages, they use IP number of the sender and the IP number of the receiver. Cool. So let's talk about different ways of uniquely identifying computers with numbers. So we can start off with an IP version 4. Now keep in mind, IP version 4 came out way in the early days of the internet. And so we wanted a temporary solution that would be, would work for their time. So what are IPv4 addresses, you might think? Well, an IPv4 address looks something like this, and y'all have probably seen these before. They're 4 numbers, and they're separated by periods, right? So like we said before, an IPv4 address, it's made up of 4 numbers that are between the numbers 0 and 255, and they're separated by periods. This way of writing IP addresses gives us roughly 4,294,967,296 possible IPv4 addresses in the internet. Now, you might be thinking 4 billion-ish is a lot of IPv4 addresses, but I want you to think for a minute how many connected devices you have. You have your smartphone, your game console, your laptop, your PC, your Xbox connecting to the internet. That's quite a bit of devices connecting to the internet. And so 4 billion is a lot of devices, but we eventually were like, 4 billion we're going to run out of IP addresses. So how do we fix this problem? Well, we introduce a new version of IPv6. Now, IPv6 is the newer version of IP, obviously. But what it's got, and here are some pictures for you. IPv6, what are IPv6 addresses, you might say? Well, an IPv6 address looks something like that. And you see it's 8 4-digit hexadecimal numbers separated by colons. Now, we see it's made up of 8 4-digit hexadecimal numbers between 000 and 0000 and FFFF, and anything in between. So it's 8 of those numbers, and they're split up by colons, which gives us really big, long addresses that look something like the one at the top. And this gives us a possible big number of IP addresses: 340 undecillion, 289 decillion, 366 nontillion, 920 septillion, 938 sextillion or something. Some number like that, which is really huge. Like, look at all these zeros here. And there's like an extra 0 at the end here that's cut off by the screen. And there's an extra number up there that's also cut off by the screen. Sorry, all. Yeah. So the point of the story is IPv6 gives us a ton more IP addresses to work with, in that we will never run out of IPv6 addresses, but we are slowly running out of IPv4 addresses. So as we transition, and every IPv4 address can be written as an IPv6 address, because, remember, IPv4 has 4 numbers that are regular decimal numbers between 0 and 255, and IPv6 has 8 hexadecimal numbers, so we can just write them with zeros at the end. Conclusion now. In this lesson, we have covered the 2 major types of IP addresses. So, pause the video and see if you can answer some of these questions. What are the 2 major IP address types? Well, go ahead and pause the video. Alright, you done? Cool. 2 major IP address types are IPv4 and IPv6. How many numbers does an IPv6 address have? Well, an IPv6 address is going to have 8 4-digit hexadecimal numbers. What is an IP address? So an IP address is a unique way of trying to identify every computer on the internet. And so important keywords to remember here are IPv4, which remember is IP Internet Protocol version 4, and it has 4 regular numbers separated by periods that are between 0 and 255. And an IPv6 address. An IPv6 address has 8 4-digit hexadecimal numbers separated by colons, and so it gives us a lot more numbers to work with, a lot more devices. There are more possible IPv version 6s than there are IPv version 4s. And then an IP address, a unique way of identifying every computer on the internet. Now, this has been a bit of a shorter lesson, but yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed it. Thank y'all for watching. I hope I do better next time. Let me know how I can improve. And see if you can answer how many, write out how many IPv6 addresses there are in the comments. Thank y'all for watching. Have a great day. Enjoy.